Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to our Bhakti Yoga class. We'll begin with our prayers. Om Jnanati Vidambasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuro Nilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashattale Shatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivas Adi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So we are discussing from third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 25, the glories of devotional service. So far we have discussed Devahuti. She approaches Kapila. She expresses her disgust for the material existence. Nirvinna Nitaran Bhuman Asad Indriya Darshanat. And she asks, please take me out of this. In response, then she compares, she glorifies Kapila by comparing him with three things. You are my transcendent light, you are such Chakshu, you are like the sun, Surya, and you are like the axe, transcendental axe, Samsara Taro Kutharam. In response to these requests, Kapila he starts describing Adhyatmik Yoga. Yoga Adhyatmikam Pumsam Mato Nishreyasayamai. He tells, I'll tell you Adhyatmik Yoga. This Adhyatmik Yoga is of three types. Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And of all these three, he says Bhakti Yoga is the easiest one. Before describing the glories of Bhakti Yoga, he describes that the mind is the pivot in all these three. And then he starts describing the glories of devotional service. He describes how न युज्यमानया भक्त्या भगवती अखिलात्मनि सदृशो अस्ति शिवः पंथा योगिनां ब्रह्म सिद्धये. There is nothing comparable to the process of devotional service. How to get this bhakti? Prasangam majaram pasham atmanam kavayo vidu sa eva sadhu shukrito mokshadvaram apavritam. One can get devotion by associating with devotees. How to identify the devotees? He describes the devotees have two qualities, the secondary qualities and the primary qualities. The secondary qualities are, they have the qualities like they are very compassionate, Tikshava, Karunika, Suridas Sarva Yoginam, all that. What are the primary qualities of a devotee? The primary quality of a devotee, he is always absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. That is the primary quality of a devotee. And by associating with devotees, one can not only get liberated, and he speaks a famous verse. It comes, Satam Prasangan Mama Virya Samvido. We discussed in great detail about that. And he says, by practice of bhakti, not only one gets liberated, one gets love for the Supreme Lord. After describing the glories of devotional service, he describes the process of Jnana and Ashtanga also in brief. And then he becomes silent. Devahuti, she asks a question. We have asked about the process of devotional service. Which type of bhakti should I perform? Kachit toyi uchita bhakti kidrishi mama gochara yaya padam te nirvanam anjasan vashnava. Which type of bhakti should I perform? By which one can aim at the Supreme Lord. Yo yogo bhagavad bhanu. By which one can aim at the lotus feet of the Lord. Which type of bhakti is the easiest one? And in response to that, Kapil Dev describes the process of sadhana bhakti. We heard in great detail, Devanam, Gunalinganam, Anushravita Karmanam, Sattva Evaika Manaso, Vritti Swabhaviki Tuya, Animitta Bhakti Bhagavati, Bhakti is Dher Gariyasi. So we heard in great detail about the process of devotional service. Sadhana bhakti, and this sadhana bhakti, what it does, it burns away the subtle body. Jaretiyashu yakosham nigirnam analoyatha. And then he describes that these devotees, they don't want anything, but I give them my own devotional service. In 34th verse, Lord says they don't want anything in return. Naikatmaname asprahayanti kechin. They don't desire to become one with me. They only want to serve me. They are always absorbed in my pastime. Sabhachayante mama paurushani. And in 35th and 36th verses, he describes that for those devotees who are serving me in this way, I give them three benedictions. He says, these devotees can see my beautiful form, they can speak with me, and then in the 36th verse, he also says that I even give them liberation. Why Lord gives them liberation? Because liberation is insignificant. Because people who are absorbed in materialistic way of life, for them, liberation is the highest. They don't know anything about devotion. And Chakravarti Thakur gives an example. He tells that if a person is selling chintamani, he is giving chintamani, he's not selling, giving chintamani freely. And people, they don't know what is chintamani. So what they think, what I don't know what is he selling, but they know gold. They know that gold is very, very precious. They are not aware that chintamani can produce unlimited quantities of gold. Therefore, the process of devotional service can give liberation very easily as a byproduct. So, to prove the superiority of the process of devotion and to attract everyone, the Lord gives liberation even to his devotees. All the devotees are not interested in that. And then in the 37th verse, Lord says, I give them the fourth thing also. So we'll recite the verse. Atho vibhutim mamamaya vinastam. Aish, somebody is reciting. Okay, I'll recite. Aishwaryam anupravrittam. Shriyam bhagavatim vaspriyanti bhatram parasya mete ashnuvate tu loke. So Lord says, because these devotees are completely absorbed in my thoughts, atho vibhuti, the devotee does not desire even the highest benediction available in the upper planetary system. That means Satyaloka. So these devotees, they do not desire. Aspriyanti, third line says, Shriya Bhagavatim va aspriyanti. They do not desire tam vibhuti. The first line says vibhuti, that vibhuti which is the highest in the material universe. What is the highest in the material universe? Brahmaloka. Aishwaryam Ashtangam Anupraviktam, and the people in that heavenly planets or upper planetary systems, they have all the siddhis also, yoga siddhis. But the devotees are not interested because these devotees, they are absorbed in the devotional service. In fact, here the Lord says, my devotee is not even interested in coming back to Vaikuntha. Bhagavati Bhadram. Bhadra Bhagavati Shriya means उनको स्वर्ग भी नहीं चाहिए, वैकुंठ भी नहीं चाहिए. Not, they don't want anything. Then what do they want? Parasya mete ashnuvate tu loke. Without even desiring these things, the devotee enjoys, even in this life. The devotee does not want anything. Salokya, Sarishti, Samipya, Sarupya, Aikatmapyuta, Diyamanam, Na Grihnanti, Vinamat Sevanam Jana. They don't want Vaikuntha, they don't want Swarga, they don't want heaven, Brahmaloka. They want to serve me. They enjoy serving me, and as a result, they automatically attain the highest of the planets. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, I'll share the slide. Share the screen just a minute. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, it is said that the bhakti gives the results of karma, jnana, and yoga performed with the absence of those practices, since those practices cannot give results without some bhakti. Anyone remembers the Chatushloki Bhagavatam? One of the Chatushloki says this: if bhakti is not there, all the other paths will not give the results. And if all the other paths are there and bhakti is not there, still they will not give the results. And if the bhakti is there, the result of all the other paths are obtained. Which was said that two, anyone remembers that two particular words?
अनय व्यतिरेकाभ्याम.
Thank you. चलो प्रेजेंटेशन देने का फायदा तो होता है. अन्वय व्यतिरेकाभ्याम. So anvaya means if it is present, then the result will come. If it is not present, whatever other things may be there, you will not get the result. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes this verse: Yat karambir yat tapasa jnana vairagyashchet yogena dana dharmena shreyoviritarairapi sarvam mad bhakti yogena mad bhakto labate anjasa vargo apavargo adhama kathanchid yadi vanchati. Whatever results one achieves by karma, तपसा, ज्ञान, वैराग्य, मिस्टिक, योगा, चैरिटी, सब जो भी मिलता है ना, सर्वम मद भक्ति योग, by practicing devotional service, mad bhakto labhate, my devotee achieves anjasa. What is the meaning of anjasa? Anyone remembers the meaning of anjasa? This word comes many times. Anjasa. Anjasa means very easily. Anjasa. Very easily one gets. If my devotee wants Swarga, he gets Swarga. He wants Apvarga, he will get Apvarga also. He will get liberation. And Mad Dham, if he wants My Dham, he will get My Dham also. He easily achieves. So basically, he says, in reality, whatever is obtained is by practice of bhakti only. Without bhakti, you can't get anything in this world and out of this world. So this verse describes that the pure devotee living on the planet of the Lord experiences all happiness which arises from the bliss of worshipping the Lord. By serving the Lord, the devotee gets the highest bliss. That's why in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Advaitacharya says, Krishna das abhiman ei anand sindhu koti brahma sukh nahe tar ek bindu. The happiness which a devotee gets by becoming servant of the Lord, Krishna das abhiman, the pride in becoming servant of the Lord, it is like an ocean of happiness. And in front of this happiness, Brahma Sukha is insignificant. 40 Brahma Sukha. Even if you multiply Brahma Sukha by millions of times, it is insignificant. What is that called? One of the qualities, secondary qualities of pure devotional service, where the pleasure of Brahman is insignificant in front of the pleasure of Bhakti. Anyone remembers?
Sandrananda Vishesha.
Yeah, Sandrananda Vishesh Atma. Bliss of Bhakti is unlimited. You know. So, and then he says, all the happiness within the universe is consolidated by Maya, after destruction of ignorance. And the happiness derived from yoga are attained following bhakti. मतलब इस संसार में जो भी आपको मिल रहा है, it is the result of practice of bhakti only. Because without bhakti, you can't get anything. Anyone remembers the analogy which is given to describe that if Gyan is there and Bhakti is not there, you will not get the result. Spoken on many times. Last class में बोला था मैंने.
Beating the husk.
Yeah, beating the empty husks. Phool tushavaghatinam. You know, beating the empty husks. So that is what he is describing here. The powers of yoga. Power of yoga के लिए एक श्लोक आता है. पुरेह भूमन बहुप्य योगिना तुदर्पितेहा निज कर्म लब्धया. I'll just Google it, find the verse number. Pureha bhuman. This verse describes how process of bhakti, if it is not there, Ashtanga yoga will not give the result. This is 10:14:5. So we have discussed about jnana. Then in this verse, 10:14:5, Brahmaji's prayers. So Brahmaji is offering this prayer. देखिए. So this 10:14:4 is about jnana. We discussed sthula tushavaghati. And then 10:14:5, he describes how the process of Ashtanga also is incomplete without bhakti. Pureha bhuman bahuvapyogina tudarpiteha nijakarma labdhaya vibudya bhaktaiva kathopanitaya prapedire agyo achyutate gatim param. Bhaktya vibudya bhaktya. If bhakti is not there, you will not get the result. So यहाँ पे चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर describes. In the previous two verses, bhakti is established as the means of attaining the Lord by negation and positive. So in this verse, it is described those who practice bhakti and they offer activities to you using all their senses to increase their devotion. By fully being engrossed in bhakti with faith and disregarding varnashram, they engage in hearing and chanting only about you. Kathopanitaya. So after practice of Ashtanga Yoga, one engages in bhakti only. Which part of Ashtanga Yoga is bhakti? Which part of Ashtanga Yoga is bhakti? The 8 limbs of bhakti are Ashtanga Yoga are there. Yam, Niyam, Asan, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharan, Dhyan, Samadhi. Yeah, Dharana and Dhyan is Bhakti Yoga because it is Vaikuntha Leela Abhidhyanam. It will come. It will come in the further chapters. Kapiladev describes about Vaikuntha Leela Abhidhyana. The yogi meditates on the form of the Lord. He does not meditate on impersonal Brahman. So that's why here also it is described that the process of devotional service gives the result of all the other paths also. Srila Prabhupada writes, the vibhutis or opulences offered by Maya are of many varieties. So Prabhupada is focusing on the word vibhuti. Atho vibhuti. What is this vibhuti? The vibhuti offered by Maya are of many varieties. We have experienced the different varieties of material enjoyment, even on this planet. But if one wants to promote to higher planet, there are immense possibilities. जितना ऊपर जाएंगे उतना उधर sense gratification. Their life is great. They have better capacity to enjoy. They have better senses to enjoy. So Prabhupada writes about all that. But even after all this enjoyment, we should know that they are all temporary. They are also material. Devotee does not aspire for these material pleasures, although they are available to him simply by wishing. The devotee can get anything of this world, but the devotee doesn't want it. Because a devotee knows the more one engages in sense gratification, how will they remember Krishna? Just like the Devatas in the heaven, they are praying. Kim dushkarena kratavisthapo pratayidana divirvajayena falguna na yatra narayana pada pankaja smriti pramushta atishaindriya utsavat. Kim dushkar, we did lots of intense tapasya, व्रत, दान, यज्ञ, सब कुछ करके अभी स्वर्ग में आ गए हम लोग. these devtas are not the original devtas. एक तो ओरिजिनल देवता आते हैं जो ब्रह्मा जी क्रिएट करते हैं, बाकी बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो यहाँ से वहां पे जाते हैं, वीजा लेके जाते हैं. Such devatas are praying, not the original devatas. These people they are praying. अभी स्वर्ग में तो पहुंच गए हम लोग. भगवत गीता श्लोक है ना, कामात्मान स्वर्ग परा जन्म कर्म फल प्रदाम क्रिया विशेष बहुलाम भोग ऐश्वर्य गतिम प्रति. They wanted to enjoy. They did lots of क्रिया विशेष बहुल. क्रिया विशेष मतलब बहुत सारा यज्ञ किया, तो पहुंच गए वहां पे. वहां पे पहुंचने के बाद अंडरस्टूड, अरे यहाँ पे तो भगवान का स्मरण ही बहुत मुश्किल है, बिकॉज अतिशय इंद्रिय उत्सव. So devotee is not interested in any of this. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has described na dhanam, na janam, na sundari. Actually, however, to one who engages in Krishna consciousness, liberation is already guaranteed. Bhagavatim Bhadram. A devotee enjoys all the opulences. He is not interested in them. Okay, then he continues. Another very, very beautiful verse where Kapil Dev describes the glories of devotee. Devahuti, she may say, well, people go to Swarga and they enjoy and they come down. The enjoyer gets destroyed and the Swarga also gets destroyed. So you are telling that they go to your abode. What is the big thing about going to spiritual world? It may be like going to Swarga, from where one can come down after the punya is destroyed. So the Lord answers this doubt of Devahuti in this 38th verse. Na karhi chinmat parashanta rupe dangshanti no me nimisho ledi heti yeshamaham priyatma sutascha Sakha guru surido daivamishtam.
The Lord continued, my dear mother, devotees who receive such transcendental opulences are never bereft of them. Neither weapons nor the change of time can destroy such opulences, because the devotees accept me as their friend, their relative, their son, preceptor, benefactor, and supreme deity. They cannot be deprived of their possessions at any time.
Yeah. So Kapil Dev is saying, don't worry, my mother. Everything of this world gets destroyed. Abrahma bhuvana loka punaravartino arjuna. But whoever comes to me, he never has to come down. Punarjanma na vidyate. So these devotees, he's saying, oh my mother, these devotees, they are matparaha. They are always devoted to me and they achieve Shantarupa. Shantarup means the devotees in the spiritual world, na nangshanti, they are never deprived of any enjoyment. Na nangshanti. By what? Everything in this world is destroyed by what? Time. Time destroys everything. He says, na nangshanti me animisho heti. Animisha means time. So in spiritual world, nothing is destroyed by time. Na ledhi. Ledhi means it is not destroyed. So the time does not affect the devotees in the spiritual world. As it is said, time is conspicuous by its absence. तो हमने 1000 बार सुना रहेगा ये वर्ड. Time is conspicuous by its absence. कितना हम समझ पाते हैं ये? We can't understand what it means, conspicuous by its absence. Because Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he writes in Jaiva Dharma, we can never understand what is spiritual world all about? Because our entire consciousness is permeated with past, present, and future. We can think only in terms of past, present, and future. So what it means when somebody says that there is no past, present, and future, our material mind cannot grasp this reality. So we have to just accept it, keep it in the car park. Hare Krishna, sorry. Am I audible?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes,
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 yes, Prabhu.
yes, yes.
There was some network issue. So, Avanimisho Ledhi Heti. The time can never destroy, but we cannot understand what it means to be that time is not there, because our entire perception is in past, present, and future. So, Yesham, and then he says, for my devotees, I am their everything. I am their Priya, Atma, Suta, Sakha, Guru, Daiva, Surida, Ishta. I am their everything. So therefore, their possessions can never be destroyed because I am their everything. So that's how Kapil Dev describes the eternality of the spiritual world. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, some devotees act as lovers, Aham Priya. Others act as Shanta Bhaktas, seeing the Lord as Atma. Others act as parents. Others act as friends. Others are in Dasya. So Kapil Dev is giving different relationships, Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, Madhurya. So that's how different devotees are in different moods. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes another verse from Narayana Vyuhastava. Pati Surid, Pati Putra Surid Bhatri Pitrivan Mitrod Harim. So the devotees, they meditate on the Lord in different moods. As a husband, as son, as relative, as brother, parents, and friend. The Prabhupada writes in the purport, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita, one may elevate himself to the highest planets, even to Brahmaloka, but again one has to come back. Which verse says this? Again one has to come back. Even if one goes to Brahmaloka, we just saw this. Brahma Bhuvana Loka Puraravartino Arjuna. So many times Prabhupada just uses Chakravarti Thakur's purport. So nothing is permanent in this material world. Even the promotion to the highest planet. But as far as devotees are concerned, their assets are never destroyed. They have nothing of this world. They are akinchana. They have their wealth. Akinchana vittaya. What is the wealth of a devotee? Namo akinchana vittaya nivritta gunavrittaye atma ramaya shantaya kaivalya pataye namaha. The wealth of the devotees is Krishna himself. And Krishna never gets destroyed. The spiritual world never gets destroyed. So Prabhupada writes, Kapil Dev addresses his mother as Shanta Rupa, indicating that the opulence of devotees who are fixed, because opulence of devotees are fixed because devotees are fixed in Vaikuntha atmosphere. Vaikuntha atmosphere is called Shantarup. Shantarup means pure goodness. There is no disturbance there. There is no passion. There is no ignorance. So that's how Srila Prabhupada focuses that how the asset of a devotee is eternal. Neha abhikramanash. Nothing gets destroyed for a devotee. Whatever he does or she does in the practice of devotional service, it is a permanent achievement. Nothing can destroy. Nanangshanti. Prabhupada writes, Nanangshanti. And then why? The reason for freedom from destruction is destroyed. What is the reason? Why it is not destroyed? Because the devotees accept Krishna as everything. and Krishna is eternal, so the relationship is eternal. Prabhupada writes here, simple formula. If you develop relationship with people of the world, how can the relation be eternal? As Akrura tells, in this world, people, they come together, they stay for some time, and then they again get separated. He gives an example. Anyone remembers the example given generally to describe the relations of the world, how they are? They stay together for some time and get separated.
It's like the straws, two straws coming together in a stream, and then again they get.
Yeah. So this verse says, Plavanam srotaso yatha. Just like the plava means the straws. They come together, they stay for some time, and then they again get separated. Suridam chitra karmanam oghena vyuhamananam plavanam srotaso yatha. So it is very wonderful how relationships are very flickering. So you develop relation with Krishna. Krishna is eternal. So the relation will never get destroyed. And then Prabhupada writes how people of this world, they have propensity to love someone. They love their pet animals and cats and dogs and whatever they love. Everything gets destroyed. They get cheated. But you develop relation with Krishna, it will be eternal. And then Prabhupada writes, a special feature of this verse is that is the acceptance of Supreme Lord as Supreme Preceptor. Supreme Preceptor means Supreme Teacher. Like Arjuna accepted Krishna as you are the Supreme Guru. Shishyaste aham. So we should also accept Krishna as Supreme Guru. So Prabhupada writes about that. And then Krishna describes whenever you speak about Krishna, Krishna is never alone. You will never see a painting of Krishna alone. You will see at least one bird will be there. Some devotee will be there. Some cow, some peacock, somebody will be there. Because a king never goes alone. So Krishna, he's a supreme king. How can he go alone anywhere? He's always surrounded by his devotees. So Prabhupada is basically describing the various relationships. Priya, Atma, Sakha, Guru, Surid, Daiva, Ishta. So Prabhupada is describing all these relationships devotees develop with Krishna. And then he says, Krishna should be accepted as one's best friend. Which verse in Bhagavad Gita says this? Krishna is the best friend, ever well-wisher. Famous verse, the peace formula verse. Anyone remembers?
Bhaktaram,
Both
Bhaktaram
related to the
Yagyatapasam
sound.
Sarvabhautamaheshwaram Suhridam Sarvabhutam.
Suhridam, yes. No, not Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Yeah, Suridam Sarva, yes, thank you. Suridam Sarvabhutanam, Gyatva Mam Shantim Richati. So he's a Surid. He always gives protection. He always gives good advice. So that's how Prabhupada writes that if one develops relation with Krishna, because Krishna never dies, the relationship is eternal. And then Prabhupada writes that in many instances, the devotees have accepted deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many instances, even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs the Shraddha ceremony of the father. I think one of the devotees, I forgot the name, Mahaprabhu के एक associate है ना, उनके श्राद्ध अभी भी उनका deity करते हैं, अभी भी होता है ऐसा, I forgot the name. Anyways, okay, so that's how the Lord describes that my abode is eternal, the relationship is eternal. Lord, so then Devavati, she gets a doubt. What if I am not able to reach the stage of bhava? What if I don't achieve perfection? Because bhakti is very rare. Does a sadhak achieve any reciprocation with the Lord in between? Because there is one thing of raganuga bhakti. But what about sadhana bhakti? Vaidhi sadhana bhakti mein kya hota hai? Does a devotee get some reciprocation with the Lord? So in next two verses, he describes the non-spontaneous sadhana bhakti. What is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? Imam lokam tathaivamu
Imam lokam tataivamu
atmanam ubhayayinam
atmanam
Uphayayanam
atmanam anuyecheha
atmanam anuyate
yeraya pashavo griha
Viraya Pashapugraha
visrijya sarvananyamsha
Visraja Sarvananyamsa
mamevam vishwato mukham
Mamevam Vishwatomukam
bhajantyananyaya bhaktya
Bhajantyanamayam
tan vrityorati paraye.
Ratiparaya.
Thus the devotee who worships me, the all-pervading Lord of the universe, is unflinching devotional service, gives up all aspirations to be promoted to heavenly planets or to become happy in this world with wealth, children, cattle, home, or anything in relationship with the body. I take him to the other side of the birth and death.
Yes. So what is the reciprocation of the Lord? I take him to the other side of the death. Tan mrityo ati paraye. So that is assurance. Imam lokam tathaiva amum. Imam lokam, happiness of this world. Amum lokam, happiness of the other world. That means heavenly pleasure. Atmanam ubhayayinam, then attachment to bodily identification. Raya, Pashavo, Griha, attachment to the wealth, family, children, cattle, home, सब कुछ. A devotee विसृज्य सब छोड़ देता है. सर्वान सब. अन्यांश अन्यांश मीन्स और जो भी है सब कुछ जो यहाँ पे दिए हैं. राय पशुओ गृह and anything else. A devotee gives up the attachment to all the things. And Mam evam vishwato mukham. He is not so much interested in the Virat Rupa also. What happens? What I do? Bhajanti ananyaya bhaktya. These devotees, they worship me with exclusive devotion. Tan mrityor ati paraye. I take them to the other side of the material universe. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, the devotees give up all the attachments of being enjoyer. And he rejects all the other things also, son, wife, other things, etc. They have bhakti, which is devoid of karma, jnana, and bhakti to the devatas. They are not interested in anything else. So this verse is talking about devotees who are practicing pure bhakti. What Lord does for them. Pure bhakti means sadhana bhakti. Non-spontaneous sadhana bhakti. This is a very important word to note. Non-spontaneous sadhana bhakti. That means Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, not Raganuga sadhana bhakti. For a devotee who is practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti also, the Vaidhi sadhana bhakta, he may have anarthas, but his faith is pure. Chakravarti Thakur writes, they have bhakti which is devoid of karma, jnana, and bhakti to devata. That is called as anyabhinashita shunyam bhakti. So the Lord, what he does for them? Tan mrityo ati paraye. And interestingly, he says, I do not inform them of this. मैं उनको नहीं बताता हूँ कि वो already liberated हैं. I take them. I do not inform this. It has already been said in the verse that bhakti destroys the subtle body. Jarayati ashu yakosham nigirnam analoyata. Already bhakti destroys. Srila Prabhupada writes, unflinching devotional service means engaging oneself in full Krishna consciousness. So that is how inclusive devotional. That means Supreme Lord is all inclusive. If anyone worships him with unflinching faith, he automatically receives all the opulences. Jo chahiye sab milega. Which verse? Second canto verse says, a devotee gets whatever he wants. If he wants the wealth of this world, he'll get. If he wants heaven, he'll get. If he wants liberation, he'll get. Famous verse. याद भी किया आप लोगों ने. अकामा. आगे क्या था? अकामा
काम
सर्व.
सर्व काम होगा.
हाँ, अकाम सर्व कामो वा मोक्ष काम उदारधि तीव्रेण भक्ति योगेन यजते पुरुषं परम. So my devotee gets everything. And ultimately, Lord promises, I'll take him to the other side. Lord Chaitanya therefore recommended, whoever wants to go beyond should have no material possessions. Na dhanam, na janam, na sundari. Should not try for anything. Then Prabhupada has a question. How liberation is imperceptibly achieved by a pure devotee? What symptoms have been explained? कैसे होता है ये? How a devotee gets liberated already? How he is beyond all the material modes? For a conditioned soul, there are two statuses of living. One status is in the present life, and other is our preparation for the next life. This is very, very important. A devotee, he stays in this world. That means he has to work in this world. But while he is staying in this world, he prepares for the next world also. That is very important. If I am in goodness, I may be preparing for promotion to higher planets. If I am in passion, I shall remain here. I am in ignorance, I'll go to lower species. Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada is paraphrasing the 14th chapter Bhagavad Gita verse. He says, Urdhvam gacchanti sattvastha, madhye tishtanti rajasa, jaganya guna vrittistha, adho gacchanti tamasa. But whoever takes shelter of Krishna, he gets promoted. He never takes birth in the material world. Although devotee is not interested in anything, he says, oh my dear Lord, wherever you keep, make me as a devotee. कीट जन्म हो यदि तुआ दास बहिर्मुख ब्रह्मा nahi mora asha. A devotee is not interested in becoming Brahma also if Brahma is not a devotee. That does not mean the devotee Brahma can be a non-devotee. It is a way to tell. उसको बोलते हैं कैमुतिक न्याय. अगर ये भी devotee नहीं बनाना तो मुझे नहीं बनना है. That means a simple language में बोलते हैं ना, if sun cannot rise but this devotee will be there for Mangalarti or something like this. तो ऐसा होगा क्या कि सूर्योदय नहीं होगा कभी? But it is a way to emphasize the consistency. So therefore the devotee is not interested in anything of this world. Even Brahma, if Brahma is not a devotee, but वो होगा नहीं कभी. ऐसा नहीं है कि ब्रह्मा नॉन डिवोटी भी होता है क्या? नहीं, वैसा नहीं है. But it is a way to emphasize the commitment and dedication of a devotee to the process of devotional service. As Vritrasura prays, na kapishtam na chaparamishtam na sarvabhaumam na rasadhipatyam na yoga siddhir punarbhavam va samanjasatvam virahaya kangshe. A devotee is not interested in anything of this world. So that's what Prabhupada writes here. A devotee is only interested in seva. बस सेवा दीजिए. सेवा नहीं है, मेरे को स्वर्ग में भी नहीं जाना है, मेरे को वैकुंठ भी नहीं जाना है. I want seva. Prabhupada writes, for my misdeeds, I may be born again and again. My only prayer is I may not forget your service. As Parikshit Maharaj prays, oh my Lord, if I have to come again, give me 3 benedictions. Anyone remembers that prayer of Parikshit Maharaj? Or the translation, Parikshit Maharaj says, I want three things, oh my Lord, if I have to come again. Anyone remembers that? Parikshit Maharaj क्या बोलते हैं? क्या चाहिए उनको? He says, oh my Lord, if I have to come again in this world, please give me three things. पुनश्च भूयाद् भगवती अनन्ते रति प्रसंगा चतुदाश्रयेषु महत्सु याम्यामुपयामि सृष्टिं मैत्र्यस्तु सर्वत्र नमो द्विजेभ्यः. He says, oh my Lord, I want Bhagavati Anante Rati. I want attraction for the Lord. That means Namaruchi. Prasanga Chatadashrayeshu. I want Vaishnava Seva. And Maitresu Sarvatra. I want Jivadaya. So a devotee is not interested in anything if there is no Seva. Here again, Prabhupada quotes, I may be born again, but let me be born in the home of a pure devotee so that I again get a chance to develop myself. So Prabhupada is basically describing this process of bhakti where the devotee does not want anything but devotion. Bhajanti ananyaya bhaktya. Prabhupada is emphasizing that word. Bhajanti ananyaya bhaktya. Then Prabhupada writes, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that without the knowledge of the devotee, the Lord arranges his devotee to be transferred to his eternal abode just after leaving the body. After quitting his body, he does not have to go to the womb of another mother. Krishna says, whoever remembers me, they'll come to me. And after coming back, they don't have to come down again. Yad gatvana nivartante. So that's how Kapil Dev glorifies the practice of devotional service. A devotee who is pure, a sadhaka who is practicing uttama bhakti, he does not want any other things. A sadhaka who is a mixed sadhaka, whose faith is not pure, he asks for things of the world also. But a sadhaka whose faith is pure, he is focused on asking service. He is not interested in going to any place if seva is not there. So that's how a devotee is interested only in seva. That is called as pure faith, pure devotion. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami mentions the 6 secondary characteristics of pure devotion: Klesha, Agni, Shubhada, Sandrananda, Visheshatma, all that. In that, it is described that Klesh, Agni and Shubhada, these two qualities, they start manifesting even at the stage of sadhana bhakti. One starts experiencing freedom from the material distress. One starts experiencing auspiciousness in one's life, even at the stage of sadhana bhakti. So that is the power of devotional service. Then, Kapil Dev, he describes, I have told about the process of devotional service, how the devotee gets everything. He doesn't want anything of this world. But in the next verse, he says, to get this result of achieving tan mrityor ati paraye, if you want that, don't mix your devotion with anything. Practice ananya bhakti. Only ananya bhakti can take one to other side of the world, not mixed bhakti. That is what he says in the next verse. Nanyatra mad bhagavataha pradhana purusheshwarat atmana sarva bhutana bhayam tibram nivartate.
The terrible fear of birth and death can never be forsaken by anyone who resorts to any shelter other than myself. For I am the Almighty Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the original source of all creation, and also the Supreme Soul of all souls.
So he says only by unalloyed devotion, न अन्यत्र और किसी भी चीज से नहीं होगा. Only by my unalloyed devotional service, one can get this result. Bhayam tivram nivartate. The terrible fear of material existence ceases only by one way, by practicing unalloyed devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is Pradhan Purusheshwarat, who is Atmana Sarva Bhutanam. Apart from that, nobody can stop this material existence. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, without devotion to me, there is no deliverance. Other than me means other than devotion to me. मेरी भक्ति नहीं करेंगे, नहीं होगा, इस संसार से नहीं छूटेंगे. And then he writes something interesting. Though having unlimited forms as the object of bhakti, the Lord has three specific forms which should be served, starting from the highest form. So he focuses on the three forms. First is the form of Bhagavan, fully manifest as Krishna alone, Bhagavataha. The three forms are mentioned, which should be served. Highest, starting from the highest. What is the highest? Highest form is Krishna. Next is Sri Ram, who is the Lord of the spiritual world, Pradhan Purusheshwarat. And the third is the three forms of as the Antaryami of the Jiva, Antaryami of the universe, Antaryami of the total Prakriti. What is this about? Who is the Antaryami of the Jiva? Which form of the Lord is Antaryami? कौन सा है?
Paramatma.
Paramatma, that is called as Shirodakshai Vishnu. Who is the Antaryami of the universe? Who is the super soul of the universe? Garbhodakshai. Who is the super soul of the entire Prakriti? That is Karanodakshai Vishnu. And then he says, all these Purusha avatars, they are the source of all the incarnations, Matsya Kurma. So, सबसे पहले highest is Krishna, then Sri Ram, then all the different avatars. So, one should worship them. Only by their worship one can get liberated. And then, okay, Srila Prabhupada writes, let's see the purport of Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada writes, Harim vinana mritim taranti. Without bhakti, one can never get liberated. Only Krishna can get liberation, can give liberation. Nobody else can give liberation. Even if somebody supposes that I am liberated, they are not liberated. The impersonalists, they suppose, they imagine that they are liberated, but they are not liberated. Yanya Arvindaksha Vimuktamanina Tvayasta Bhava Vishuddha Buddhaya Aruhya Krichrena Parampadam Tata Patanti Adha Anadrit Yushmadangraya. Anadrit Yushmadangraya. If you are not rendering devotion to the Lord, you can never get devotion. You can never get liberated. They are vimukta manina, वो मान लेते हैं कि हम मुक्त हो गए हैं, but they are not mukta. Avishuddha buddhi, their intelligence is contaminated. Their contaminated intelligence says that you don't have to practice bhakti and you are still liberated. No, it is not possible. So Prabhupada quotes this verse. And then he says how it is so very rare to practice bhakti, bhunam janmanamante. Without the surrendering process, one cannot get liberation. And then the Bhagavatam says, those who are puffed up, thinking themselves liberated, Prabhupada is again speaking the same verse. Yenni arvindaksha vimuktamanina. They again fall down to the material activities. So basically, Prabhupada again and again describes without taking shelter of devotion, without taking shelter of the Lord, no one can get liberated. However, detached one may be externally in this world, because the material impersonalists, they are very detached. They don't have any attachments for anything of the world. But he says, Nanyatra mad bhagavataha, without my mercy, there is no rescue. So that's how it is. Devahuti, he may say, okay, but the problem is, if I worship only you, or if I worship only Supreme Lord and not worship the Devatas, they may become angry, because they are also very powerful and they may give suffering to your devotees. So the Lord, expecting this, he says, who are these Devatas? Huh? Very famous verse. Madhvayad vati vatoyam Suryastapati madhvayat Varshati indro dahati agni Mrityushcharati madhvayat. Translation.
It is because of my supremacy that the winds blows out of fear of me, the sun shines out of fear of me, and the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. Fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me.
So Lord says, don't worry if, यहाँ पे Krishna Chakravarti Thakur writes, the wind blows out of fear, the sun rises in fear, Agni and Indra move, death flees out of fear. And then, interesting line, Chakravarti Thakur writes, if they sometimes harass my devotee, I do not delay in removing them from their positions. And this happened almost in the Govardhan Leela. Because Indra ultimately surrendered, he was saved, he was forgiven. So that's how. And Prabhupada in the purport describes how Krishna is Supreme Lord and all the other Devatas, they are the different department heads, they are Adhikari Devatas, Prabhupada writes. Madhvayad vati vatoyam yam yam brahma varunendra rudra maruta stanvanti divyai stavai vedai sanga padai kramopanishadi gayanti yam samaga ध्यानावस्थित तद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यम योगिनो यस्यांतं न विदुसुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः. All the devtas, Indra, Chandra, Varuna, they're all worshipping the Lord, offering glorification to the Lord. Ekala Ishwara Krishna Arsabha Bhritya Se Taicha Ne Chahiye Taicha Kare Nritya. So all the other devtas, they are Adhikari devtas. In other place, Bhagavatam calls them Chayeva Karma Sachiva. They are the attendants of the karma. They are just giving the results of karma. That's all. So Prabhupada emphasizes that, how the Lord is supreme. He quotes another verse from Vedas. Bhishasmad vatah pavate bhishodeti suryaha. By the fear of the Supreme Lord, the wind god and the sun god are acting. Bhishasmad agnischandrascha mrityu dhavati panchamaha. Agni, Indra, Mrityu are also acting under his direction. And then, after describing the glories of devotional service, he says, Kapildev says, what to speak of devotees, even jnanis and yogis, they take shelter of bhakti to get results. Again, he's saying the same thing. How one gets perfection only by practice of bhakti. Even jnanis and the yogis, they get devotion. So we'll recite the next verse. ज्ञान वैराग्य युक्तेन भक्ति योगेन योगिनः क्षेमाय पाद मूलं मे प्रविशन्ति अकुतो भयम्. Translation.
The yogis equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engage in devotional service for their eternal benefit take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdoms of Godhead without fear.
Jnana Vairagya Yuktena. So the yogi is equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation. Bhakti Yuktena. They are engaged in devotional service. The yogis, they are engaged in devotional service. Then only they achieve perfection. Shemaya. Shemaya means they attain benefit only when they worship me. Pada Moolam me. Because I am the Lord. I give fearlessness. And then only they can enter the kingdom. So Jnana Vairagya Yukta and Bhakti Yogena. Jnana Vairagya means the process of Jnana. Bhakti Yogena means the process of Ashtanga Yoga. So Yoga means Ashtanga Yoga. Bhakti Yoga means the Ashtanga Yoga which is mixed with devotion. So without Bhakti, it is not possible. Tapasvino Dhanaparayo Shishvino Manasvino Mantravido Sumangala Shemam Navindanti Vinaya Darpanam Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha. तपस्वी दानपरा यशस्वी मनस्वी मंत्रविद सुमंगला ये कुछ भी कर लो आप क्षेमम न विंदन्ति the word used here is the same क्षेमाय क्षेमाय means the benefit क्षेमम न विंदन्ति they will not get benefit if they don't surrender and offer their results to Krishna na vindanti. Srila Prabhupada writes, if one actually wants to be liberated from the material world and go back home, he is actually mystic yogi. The words explicitly used here as are yuktena bhakti yogena. So the mystic yogis who engage in devotional service are first class yogis. So basically now Ashtanga yogis, when they practice devotion prominently, then they become first class yogis. So there is Bhakti Mishra Yoga and Yoga Mishra Bhakti. So there is Bhakti prominent sometimes, and some devotee may have some inclinations towards the Ashtanga Yoga process, but the Bhakti is prominent. In due course of time, by that Bhakti also one can get liberated. And the result may not be the highest type of liberation, but one gets liberated. So that's the process. And then Prabhupada writes, who is the first class yogi? First class yogi is one who thinks about Krishna. Yoginam api sarvesham adgaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yo mam samayukta tamo mata. Prabhupada writes, Bhakti yogi is the best. To become a Bhakti yogi means to automatically attain knowledge and renunciation. कौन सा श्लोक यहाँ पे लिख रहे हैं प्रभुपाद? Bhakti yogi automatically gets knowledge and renunciation. Very simple, very common. वासुदेवे भगवती भक्ति योग प्रयोजित जनयति आशु वैराग्यम ज्ञानम च यद अहेतुकम. ज्ञान वैराग्य comes automatically without any other reason. अहेतुकी, it comes. Even if the person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge is revealed unto him. Any example for this? Even if the person is illiterate, he gets transcendental realizations. The story of South Indian Brahmin comes. He was reading Bhagavad Gita, he was illiterate, he was not reading properly. Still, he was crying in ecstasy, seeing the cover page of Bhagavad Gita. And the Lord says, oh, you are crying, but you don't know, you are not reading properly, still you are crying. How come? Arjunera rathe Krishna hoye rajudhar बसिया छे हाथे तोत्र श्यामल सुंदर अर्जुने रे कहिते छे न हेतु उपदेश ही लागे होए मोरो आनंद आवेश. And I see Krishna holding the reins of Arjuna's chariot, driving for his own devotee. My heart is filled with ecstasy. प्रभु कहे गीता पाठे तुम्हारा ही अधिकार, तुमी तो जानी हसे गीता अर्थ सार. You are only qualified to read Bhagavad Gita. You know the essence of Bhagavad Gita. So that's how a person who is absorbed in devotion, all the imports of the scriptures are revealed. And then again, Prabhupada quotes a famous verse. To anyone who has full faith in the Supreme Lord and the spiritual master, all the import of Vedic knowledge is revealed. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tatha gurau tasyaite kathitahi artha prakashante mahatmanaha. Prakashante. All the results, all the knowledge, all the realizations are revealed to a person who is having faith in the Lord and in the spiritual master. So that is what is described here. The conclusion is that one cannot be sure of entrance into the spiritual realm in either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or the Vaikuntha planets unless he is surrendered. भक्ति नहीं है तो ब्रह्मन में भी नहीं जा सकता, वैकुंठ में तो दूर की बात है. Surrendered souls are akuto bhayam pravishanti akuto bhayam. The last line says pravishanti akuto bhayam. So far he described Shuddha Bhakti, pure Bhakti. Now in this 43rd verse, Kapiladev describes Bhakti which is mixed with Jnana. They also get liberated. And then in 44th verse, he says, but I am not recommending you to practice this Bhakti Mishra Jnana, Jnana Mishra Bhakti. You practice pure Bhakti only and you will get the ultimate result. That is what his recommendation is in the 44th verse. Etavane valokesmin pumsani shreya sodaya tivrena bhakti yogena manomai arpitam sthiram. Translation. Lord says, Etavan eva lokesmin pumsa nishraya sodaya. This is the only means for attainment of the final perfection of life. Eva, this is the only means. What is that? Tivrena bhakti yogena. Intense practice of devotional service. Manomai arpitam. Mind offered to the Supreme Lord in pure devotional service. Steadiness, with steadiness, thiram bhakti, one can achieve the highest perfection. So the jnanis and yogis can get liberation only if it is mixed with bhakti. But the pure practitioner of bhakti yoga gets prema. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, pure bhakti offered to me is best of all. There is nothing higher than this. Everything else is superior. This bhakti is Tivra Bhakti. So that's how Kapil Dev ends this chapter. This chapter ends by Lord recommending pure devotional service to his mother. We'll continue the next chapter, 26th chapter, Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. So after describing the glories of pure devotional service, in this chapter now, again, this creation will come. So far, creation has come many times. Again, here the creation will come for the 5th time. The universal form will be described 5th time. So far, Virat Roop has been described four times. First time it was described in the second canto, first chapter. The purpose of the description was to describe the dharanashraya of a attached yogi. Dharanashraya means the object of meditation. What a attached yogi meditates on. Then, in the sixth chapter of the second canto, again it was described. The purpose of the description was anything material you see in this world, anything efficient cause you see in this world, Lord is the material and the efficient cause. He is the nimitta karan, he is the upadana karan. He is ultimately the cause of everything. And then the 10th chapter of the second canto, again it was described. Why it was described? There it was spoken how the universal form desired and this was created. The universal form desired to see and the eye was created. Universal form desired to hear, the ears were created. The purpose of that description was whatever our gross and subtle desires are, they shape our body. They shape our subtle body. They shape our gross body. Then again in the sixth chapter of this third canto, the creation had come. The purpose of that description was the universal form was created by Lord's Chit Shakti. The Lord has created this universal form so that all the elements can perform their functions. And now in this chapter, again the creation is coming. And the purpose is, in this chapter, it will be described, the universal form will be described. Without the Paramatma, the Jiva cannot exist. There are two types of Kshetragya. Bhagavad Gita 13th chapter describes Kshetragya are of two types. One is Atma, other is Paramatma. In this chapter, it will be described only because Paramatma is there, the Atma exists in the body. Without Paramatma, the Atma cannot exist only. Because it will be described in this chapter that so many things, so many devatas were working to manifest this material form of the universe. It was not happening. Only when Lord entered, then the universal form arose, started functioning. So that is the purpose of the fifth time description of universal form. So now in this chapter, we'll begin. Lord continues the description. Shri Bhagavan uvacha athate sampravikshami tattvanam lakshanam pratak yad viditva vimuccheta purusha prakritair gunaihi. So the Lord says, athate sampravikshami. Now I shall describe unto you tattvanam lakshanam pratak, the different categories of the absolute truth. What will happen by knowing all this? Yad viditva, after knowing this, vimuchyeta, one gets freed, one gets released from purusha prakritair gunai. One gets freed from the influence of the material modes. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, being influenced, being questioned by the mother about bhakti, jnana and yoga, Kapila explained bhakti. His mother was fully satisfied with that. However, even persons engaged in bhakti, which reigns supreme everywhere without authority, since without bhakti, karma, jnana, yoga cannot give results. So the same thing which is described, we have heard many times. Bhakti is the supreme. Without bhakti, karma, jnana, yoga cannot give the results. So now, in this chapter, again, Kapila is describing the process of Ashtanga, process of Jnana Yoga. So, why again he is describing Jnana Yoga? Bhakti bata diya na itna detail mein. Why is again describing Jnana Yoga? Because a devotee should know his philosophy and he should know the others' philosophy also, so that he can defeat them or he can develop faith in his own philosophy. One time Srila Prabhupada was in a flight with one of the servants. Prabhupada told, okay, now we will do something. You become a atheist and I'll become a devotee and we will argue, we'll debate. So this devotee was doing all the arguments. Why God does not exist? And Srila Prabhupada defeated all of these arguments. And then Prabhupada said, now you become a devotee, I'll become an atheist. So that devotee thought, abhi mere ko to sab malum hai kya bolna hai. To his surprise, Prabhupada still defeated him. And then Prabhupada says, that's how you should know your own philosophy and others' philosophy. So a devotee, so Devahuti, she wanted to hear about Jnana, not for practicing Jnana. She wanted to hear about Jnana to know how Bhakti is superior. Prabhupada writes in the purport, Bhakti amamaj vijanati, only by the practice of devotional service one can know Krishna. And then as Krishna says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described, Krishna means to understand Krishna in his personal form with his internal energy, external energy, his expansions, and his incarnations. Panchatattvatapakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam. So Krishna means to know all these things. So here, Sankhya philosophy is again described. Jnana is again described for people who are conditioned by the material world. So only by practicing in a parampara, by understanding in parampara, one can actually know things. Otherwise, it is so very easy to get deviated and distracted. Prabhupada writes about that. It is generally understood by the parampara. Preliminary studies of devotional service has already been explained. Now the analytical study of devotional service will be explained. Analytical study of devotional service means Jnana. Jnana Yoga will be described again. He continues. First, Jnana, to understand Jnana is little not so exciting. So, in the beginning only, Kapila tells what is the result of knowing the qualities of elements. Because Jnana means you know the elements. You get to know all the 23 elements of the nature. What are the qualities of these elements? तो एक डिवोटी सोचेगा इतना पढ़ के फायदा क्या होने वाला है. So Jnana Yogi, he should be aware of the results. So here, in the second verse, Kapila describes Jnanam nishreyasarthaya purushasyaatmadarshanam yada hurvarna yetatte hridaya granthi bhedanam. Jnanam nishreyasa arthaya. This knowledge is for attaining the nishreyasa. It is for attaining the highest goal. What is that highest goal? Purushasya Atma Darshanam. It is about the knowledge of the Atma, that means Supreme Atma. And Yadahu Varnaye Yatte Tatte. I will explain that knowledge to you. What will be the result of this? Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam. By this, the knots of attachment for this world will be cut. So therefore, Prabhupada writes in the purport, It is said that by the proper understanding of the pure self, one can be freed from the material attachment. As soon as one realizes that this world is not so attractive, the ultimate purpose of the Sankhya is to break down the forms of the world into the material elements. For example, if somebody sees a rasgulla or a gulab jamun, it is very attractive. But as soon as you break down the rasgulla or gulab jamun into the ingredients, atta or maida and sugar, it is not so attractive. Nobody gets attracted to maida and sugar and water and ghee. But when they come together, the combination is attractive. So the whole process of Sankhya Yoga is to break down the elements, break down the forms of the world and see them as elements, so that ultimately one gets detached from the world. That is called as Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam. Prabhupada writes, knowledge leads to attain the ultimate perfection of life and see oneself as he is. Tam eva viditvati mrityum eti. Simply by understanding one's spiritual position, one can be freed from material entanglement. Purushasya Atma Darshanam. So the more one knows who he is, the more one gets detached. I am not this body, I am soul. So I'll be detached. I will not be attracted by the things of the world because I will realize that nothing of this world will satisfy me. Nothing of this world can make me happy. Hiranyakashipu tried his best to be happy by things of the world. Saitam nirjit kapu bekarat vishayan priyan yathopajosham bunjano natripyat ajitendriya. But still he was now tripyat. He had everything. Therefore, when a person actually realizes that I am not this body, I am soul, then why I am getting material things? Because material things cannot give me happiness and satisfaction. Therefore, in this way, one will get detached. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport about the actual condition, actual situation, position of the living entity, Jivera Swarupa Hoye Krishnera Nityadas. And the more we are situated in this position, the more we get detached. Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam will happen only when we get detached, or only when we start serving the Lord. Many times, devotees, they pray, and most of the prayers are full of, please reduce my lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, illusion. I am so very disturbed by these anarthas. But that is not the right way. The right way to pray is, please give me attraction for the names, attachment for service. The more we get attached to the devotees, the more we get attached to seva and holy names, natural consequences, anarthas will go down. So that is the process. The more we realize that I am part and parcel of the Lord, I am supposed to serve the Lord, the more that desire to enjoy things of the world will go down. Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam will happen automatically. So that is what is described. And then, after describing the result of knowing the elements from 3rd to 8th verse, Kapila goes into another technical description of the interactions between Jiva, Prakriti, and Purusha. So he continues this description of between Jiva, Prakriti, and Purusha. How the interaction happens, what are the various characteristics of the Jiva, Prakriti, and Purusha. So in the 3rd verse, he describes the characteristics of the Supreme Lord, characteristics of the Purusha. Anadir Atma Purusho Nirguna Prakrite Para Pratyak Dhama Swayam Jyotir Vishwam Ena Samanvitam. So this Lord He has Atma Purusha. This Atma is the Supreme Purusha, who is Anadi, who has no beginning, who is Nirvana without material qualities, who is Prakriti Param, who is beyond Prakriti, who is Pratyak. Pratyak means he is beyond the senses. He is Dhama. He is situated in his eternal abode always. Who is Swayam Jyoti, who is self-effulgent, and Vishwam Yena Samanvitam. From him, the universe appears. He continues. As a pastime, Saesha, in the fourth verse, he says, Saesh Prakritim Sukshmam Daivim Gunamayim Vibhum Yadrichayevopagatam Abhyapadyat Leelaya. As a pastime, as a Leela, that Supreme Lord, Saesha, this Supreme Lord who is Vibhu, as a pastime, he accepts Prakriti. As a pastime, he comes in touch with, of course, the Lord doesn't come directly in touch with the material nature. But as a pastime, he starts entering in this Prakriti. And what is this Prakriti all about? Sukshma. Subtle, in subtle state he enters. This Prakriti, it is composed of Gunamayi. It is composed of the various modes of the nature. And nobody tells the Lord to enter into Prakriti. Nobody pushes him to indulge in all these creation. Yadrichayeva upagatam. By his own free will, he does it. Why he does it? What impels the Lord to enter into the material universe? Only for one reason. For the welfare of people in general. To inspire, to perform all the pastimes so that the living entities of the world, they can get another chance to return back to the spiritual world. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada focuses on Leelaya. The last word is Leelaya. He says how the Lord performs various pastimes. And the Prabhupada writes in the purport. The word Gunmai is significant. Daivi means the energy of the Lord. And Gunamai means invested with the three modes of material nature. When the material energy of the Lord appears, this Gunamai energy acts as a manifestation of the energies of the three modes. It acts as a covering. So the Mahamaya has three parts. We have discussed earlier also. Vidya, Avidya, and Prakriti or Pradhan. So the Avidya portion covers. It has two parts. Avaranatmika and Prakshepatmika. So that is what Prabhupada is writing here. The Avaranatmika Shakti covers the original constitutional position of the living entity. The energy emanated from the Lord manifests in two ways. As an emanation from the Supreme Lord and as a covering of the Lord's face. Avaran and Prakshepa. Prabhupada is paraphrasing these two words. Avaran and Prakshepa. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the whole world, because the whole world is illusioned by the three modes, the conditioned soul, they can't see the Lord. Tribhera Gunamayer Bhavair Sarvamidam Jagat Mohitamana Vijanati Mamebhyat Paramabhyayam. This is 7th chapter, 13th verse. Prabhupada is paraphrasing here. The entire world is covered by the modes, and the living entities being conditioned by the modes can't see the Lord. Prabhupada gives the example of the clouds. The sun is never covered by the cloud, but our vision is covered by the cloud. Sun always remains effulgent. Prabhupada writes, the example of the cloud is very nicely given. All of a sudden, there may appear a big cloud. This cloud is perceived in two ways. To the sun, the cloud is the creation of its energy, because the sun only creates the cloud. Because of the sun, water evaporates and the cloud is formed. But the problem is, this cloud covers the vision of the living entities. Supreme Lord, He has created this Mahamaya, and this Mahamaya covers the living entities. And then Prabhupada writes how this Mahamaya covers by quoting a verse from the first canto. After Narad Muni gave elaborate description of the glories of devotional service, he instructed Vyasdev briefly, and then Vyasdev was meditating. Vyasdev saw the Supreme Lord, Bhakti Yogena Manasi, Samyak Pranihite Amale, Apashyam Purushat Purnam, Mayam Chatadapashrayam. He saw the Supreme Lord and he also saw the Maya standing behind. Why he saw the Maya also? Because a physician should know the patient and he should know the disease, and then only he gives the medicine. So Maya Devi, Vyasdev saw the Maya problem was seen. Then he gave the medicine. The medicine was the chanting of the names of the Lord. Yasyam vai shruyamanayam Krishne parama purushe bhaktir utpadyate pumsam shoka moha bhaya apaha. So that is the process. So Prabhupada writes about that. So this is all the Leela of the Lord. The Lord is acting in this material world, performing all these pastimes so that we can come out of this illusion. And then in the 5th verse, he continues the description. Gunair vichitra srijatim sarupa prakritim praja vilokya mumuhe sadya saeha jnana guhaya. Then he says, when the Lord enters in this world, creates the illusory potency, that illusory potency bewilders the jiva. How the jiva is bewildered, that is described in the 5th verse. He says, Vilokya Prakriti. This Prakriti, which creates Srijate, which creates all the different types of bodies, with varieties of the Gunair Vichitra. Material nature provides all the bodies in different modes. And by these material bodies, what happens? Mumuhe Sadya. The living entity immediately gets bewildered by this, by avidya, gyan guhaya. So the living entity gets completely bewildered by this material prakriti. So first, the Lord is described in the 3rd verse. Then Lord's energy is described in the 4th verse. That is prakriti. And then the jiva is described in the 5th verse. पहले भगवान बताया, फिर प्रकृति बताया, फिर जीव को बता रहे. जीव का क्या हो रहा है? Jiva is getting bewildered. And under the influence of the bewildered jiva, what he thinks. So Prabhupada writes in the purport about the pastimes of the Lord, Leela of the Lord. He describes how the Lord manifests all these wonderful pastimes, Leelaya. So interestingly, Prabhupada, he in the 4th verse, the word Leelaya had come. Abhyapadyata Leelaya. Prabhupada is elaborating on the word Leelaya in the 5th verse purport. He's not doing in the 4th verse purport. He is doing in the 5th verse purport. And in this he describes why this material world was created for the suffering of the conditioned souls is a very intricate question. Now people asking, दुनिया famous question है, दुनिया बनाई क्यों भाई? इतना problem वाली दुनिया क्यों बना दी? अच्छी बना देते. Prabhupada writes, it is a very intricate question. There is a hint in the previous verse in the word Leelaya. Lord has created this world for pastimes. Somebody may ask, ये अच्छा है. उनकी लीलाया के लिए हमारा प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है, हमको इतना प्रॉब्लम क्रिएट हो रहा है. Just because he wants to perform some leela, he is putting people into problems. Why? What type of leela is this? Prabhupada clarifies. This is a leela of rectifying the rebellious mentality of the living entities. Prabhupada writes that the Lord wants to rectify the enjoying temperament of the conditioned souls. It is stated in Gita that no one is enjoyer but Supreme Lord. Krishna is the only enjoyer. As Krishna tells in the 5th chapter, last verse. Bhoktaram yagya tapasam. He is a Supreme Lord. He is an enjoyer. Prabhupada continues. This material energy is created, therefore, for anyone who pretends to enjoy. If anyone wants to enjoy, Lord gives all the facility. Okay, you enjoy. Prabhupada gives the example of a prison house. How the prison house is created for criminals. The Lord has created this prison house of the world. And the people, living entities, they are put here who have this enjoying mentality separately from the Lord. They are called as Nitya Baddha. Nitya means eternally conditioned because nobody knows when we came here. Interestingly, when the Nitya Baddha becomes Mukta, he is called as Nitya Mukta. He becomes eternally liberated also. So that's how Prabhupada is describing the Leela of the Lord. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in the purport, he continues. He describes a little more about this in the 6th verse. Sorry, I'll just go to the 6th verse. Yeah. Yes, in the 5th verse. Chakravarti Thakur writes, the bewilderment of the jivas are described. Seeing the Prakriti, the jiva immediately becomes bewildered, forgetting his Swarupa, since he is connected to the function of the avidya belonging to Prakriti. We have heard material nature, the Mahamaya has 3 roles, Vidya, Avidya, and Prakriti. As soon as the living entity who comes in this world wanting to enjoy, he is covered by the Avaranatmika Shakti. He forgets that he is the eternal servant of the Lord. Jivara Swarupa Krishna Nityadas. He wants to enjoy, he gets confused and bewildered. Though the Jiva is eternally connected with Avidya, Jiva was in some realization of his Swarup at the time of destruction, before the creation. Just as the Jiva, when sleeping, realizes his Swarup a little. At the beginning of the creation, however, he forgets that. So, this is some technical detail which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is writing. A living entity is called as Nitya Baddha. Nitya matlab कब से इसमें पड़े हैं मालूम नहीं है. That's why Chakravarti Thakur is writing here, eternally connected with avidya. कब से पड़े हैं मालूम नहीं. But at the time of destruction of the universe, what happens? All the living entities, they are stripped of their subtle body, and all the souls, they reside in the body of Mahavishnu. So if living entities are stripped of the subtle body, that means this is a liberated condition, right? Liberation means being free of the subtle and gross coverings. But that situation of liberation is not so palatable for Jiva, because that is forced separation. The desire was still there. Forcibly, the subtle body was taken away. So the Jiva is really hankering for that. He gets some realization of what is liberation, but that is not palatable for the Jiva. The second example of how one perceives liberation is during the deep sleep. During the deep sleep, what happens? The gross body's perception is not there. Even subtle body is not there. Mind stops functioning in deep sleep. So in the deep sleep, one experiences what is called as liberation. So although all our senses are inactive in the deep sleep, but still after we get up, we say, wow, it was a good sleep. That means it was some experience is still there. Who is experiencing that? That is soul experiencing the liberation. But again, he forgets that was for a small time. So that is what is described here. At the beginning of the creation, he forgets that. Again, the subtle body is given. So that is what Srila Prabhupada writes here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes. And then he continues. Srila Prabhupada in the purport also describes, he focuses on the word Jnana Guhaya. Guha means covering. Because the knowledge of the minute conditioned soul is covered, they are exhibited in so many species of life. The bewildered living entities get into so many different species of life, depending on the desires they have cultivated in previous lives. Yaya sammohito jivo trigunam trigunatmakam atmanam parutenartham. He says, Yaya sammohito jivo, the living entities, they are bewildered by the material energy. Trigunam trigunatmakam. Prabhupada quotes that. And then Prabhupada writes how the different modes are different colored. Red, white, and blue. Red represents mode of passion. Blue represents mode of ignorance. And white represents mode of goodness. So that's how the interaction is being described. So now, first in the third verse, he described about the Lord. In the fourth verse, he described Prakriti. In the fifth verse, he described the bewildered Jiva. And what is the action of this bewildered Jiva? Karta kya hai wo? How can you identify this Jiva is bewildered? In the sixth verse, he describes that this Jiva who is bewildered, you know how he works? He starts thinking, I am the doer. As Bhagavad Gita 27th, 3rd chapter, 27th verse says, Prakrite kriyamanani gune karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma karta aham iti manyate. This is how the Jiva thinks that he is the doer. That is described in the 6th verse. And the result of this understanding is what? The result of this understanding is the jiva is bound in the cycle of birth and death. So that is described in the 7th verse. So that's how Kapila has described so far how the interaction of the jiva and the prakriti happens. So the living entity, he is bewildered by the modes of nature. Then he starts thinking, I am the doer. And under the influence of this understanding, misconception, he starts thinking that I will enjoy. And because of this mentality, the living entity continues to suffer. Srila Prabhupada, in the 7th verse purport, he again focuses on the word Leelaya. Prabhupada writes, some Mayavadis, they say, oh, I have become a dog. That means, oh, this is my Leela to become a dog. Mayavadi philosophers, they think we are the Supreme Lord. Then why you are in the dog form? Oh, this is my Leela. So Prabhupada writes that, oh, what type of God is this? He is doing Leela of being dragged to a form of a stool-eating hog. And he's enjoying this. What type of Leela is this? Prabhupada writes there in the 7th verse purport. Mayavadi philosopher says that conditions existence of the living entity is his Leela. But the word pastime implies employment in the activities of the Lord. The Mayavadis use the word and say that even if the living entity has become a stool-eating hog, he is enjoying his pastimes. This is the most dangerous interpretation. Krishna cannot come under the control of anyone. The living entities, they come under the control of the material modes. So if somebody says, oh, ye meri leela hai, I am eating stool, oh, this is dangerous. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he was giving a talk and one person got up and said, Swamiji, what is the problem in becoming dog? Prabhupada said, you have my blessings, you become a dog. Living entities, they don't even understand that there is a problem in becoming a dog. So Krishna never comes under the control of the material nature and performs all these foolish things. He is always beyond the modes of nature. As Bhagavatam 1st Canto 10th chapter describes, Etad Ishana Nishasya Prakriti Tadgunai Na Yujyate. Although the Lord is situated in this material world, he never gets affected by the modes of the material world. So that is described in the 7th verse. And then in the 8th verse, he describes the very famous verse from Bhagavad Gita. This 8th verse is similar. 13th chapter, 21st verse of Bhagavad Gita, and this 8th verse of the 26th chapter is very similar. Karya karan kartritve karanam prakritim vidu bhoktritve sukha dukkhanam purusham prakrite param. Very similar. Bhagavad Gita verses Karya Karana Kartritve Hetu Prakritiruchyate Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam Bhoktritve Hetuchyate. This verse describes the seed of the material existence. They say, the Vidu, the learned people, what they say? Karanam Prakriti. Prakriti is the cause of the jiva's actions. And Prakriti is the cause of the body. Prakriti is the cause of the senses. Prakriti is the cause of the sense devatas. सब कुछ उनसे ही आता है ना. प्रकृति से ही बॉडी मिल रहा है, प्रकृति से सेंस मिल रहा है, प्रकृति से सेंस देवताज आ रहे हैं. कार्य, कारण and कर्तृत्व, they are all coming from Prakriti. And by getting this, Purusha Sukha Dukkhanam, some people say That the Prakriti is the cause of the Jiva's actions. Because from Prakriti, the body comes, from the Prakriti, senses come, from Prakriti, Devatas come. Some people say, Supreme Lord who is superior to Prakriti, he is the cause of the happiness and suffering of the living entities. That is the translation which Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives. Bhoktritve hetu uchyate. So basically, to understand it in a simple way, this verse describes that how living entities, they enjoy or suffer because of their desires. Because the living entity desires, they suffer. And ultimately, unless the Lord sanctions, the living entities cannot enjoy. So in one sense, somebody can say Supreme Lord is the cause of everything. That is also a fact. So that is how it is described as Karya Karan Kartitve Karanam Prakritim Vidu Bhoktritve Sukha Dukkhanam Purusham Prakrite Param. The cause of the conditioned soul's material body and the senses presiding deities, the demigods, is the material nature. This is understood by the learned man. And the feelings of happiness and distress of the soul who is transcendental by nature are caused by the spirit soul himself. Okay, so we'll stop here. We'll continue next time. This is a little technical topic, maybe a little not so exciting. But anyways, we'll have to cover these topics also. Okay, we'll stop here. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai. I'll put the
Jai
question
Hare
paper
Krishna.
on the group.